My crush and my best friend made my life a living hell for months, so I gave them a taste of their own medicine, literally. 5 years later, they're awkwardly avoiding my dessert table at a wedding. My crush and my best friend forced my hand. I'm not responsible for what happened to them. In 10th grade, I thought things were finally turning around for me because my crush Garrett stood in the middle of the cafeteria holding a red velvet cupcake and asked me to homecoming. I was the happiest girl in the world. But right after I accepted his proposal, he handed Olivia, my best friend since 3rd grade, a small bouquet of flowers and said he just didn't want her to feel left out. I told myself he was just being kind, but the way they looked at each other a second too long made something twist in my chest. Over the next few days, Olivia and I went dress shopping together. She helped curl my hair the afternoon of homecoming and told me I looked perfect, but something in her eyes felt like pity more than admiration. At the park for pictures, Garrett gave me a forced smile before tossing his arm around Olivia and saying she should pose with him just for laughs, and then kept her there for every other photo while I stood off to the side like their unpaid photographer. He spun her around like they were auditioning for a romance movie and kept saying she was a natural. In the car on the way to the dance, they sat pressed together in the back seat while I drove alone in silence, only glancing back once to see their fingers tangled and Olivia resting her head on his shoulder like she had always belonged there. When Garrett caught me looking through the rearview mirror, he snapped at me to keep my eyes on the road like I was their chauffeur. Once we arrived, they walked into the gym without waiting for me and laughed at an inside joke. I followed after, already drowning. At the dance, I stood by the wall holding a flimsy plastic cup while they danced together, ignoring me like I had never been invited. Every time I tried to approach, they moved further away until the music slowed and I finally caught them kissing behind the bleachers. In that moment, something inside me changed into disgust, so complete it felt holy. For weeks, I said nothing, smiled through it all, and acted like I had been fine with just being their third wheel. But when Valentine's Day came around and our culinary teacher announced we'd be making chocolates for class gifts, it felt like fate handed me a knife and told me where to aim. I spent days in my kitchen at home under the pretense of testing recipes, but each batch I made for Garrett and Olivia was a calculated weapon. I melted dark chocolate and stirred in enough overproof rum to cling to the roof of their mouth. I crushed laxatives until they turned to powder, measuring the exact dose that would explode in their stomachs 20 minutes after ingestion. I added a touch of ghost peppers into the filling. I tempered the chocolate to a glossy sheen and filled gold wrappers with hearts that looked hand-drawn with care. At the end of culinary class, we headed over to our algebra class for an exam. I handed the treats out casually, mentioning that chocolate stimulates the brain and that mine were extra strong. I then gave Olivia and Garrett my special recipe, saying that friends get special treatment. Everyone ate the chocolates and cleared their desks to take the exam. 15 minutes in, I watched him shift in his seat, legs tightening, forehead covered with sweat. Olivia blinked rapidly, her jaw tightening as she dropped her pencil and pressed her hand to her abdomen. When they both raised their hands and begged to be excused, the teacher, known for never allowing interruptions during tests, told them to sit back down and focus. Garrett gripped the desk while Olivia rocked in her seat, blinking back tears. Just when the room began to quiet again, a deep, watery gurgle echoed through the silence. Olivia let out a panicked gasp and then bent over as she vomited onto the floor beside her backpack. It came out in thick ropes that went all over the carpeted floor. Chunks of half-digested chocolate and bile flew into the air. Garrett made a strangled noise and stayed seated, but we all smelled the crap coming from his pants. The smell hit like a slap. It was sharp and acidic with the unmistakable sting of alcohol and rot. Students began covering their mouths, gagging, pushing their chairs back in horror. One girl bolted out of the room and threw up in the hallway. Another screamed after seeing what was causing the odor. Garrett's seat was covered and dripping with semi-solid brown excrement that mixed in with Olivia's vomit, seeping into the carpet and dripping onto the floor in a sickening, sticky stream. The teacher rushed over only to recoil immediately when he got close enough to inhale the alcohol on their breath. Suddenly, it wasn't just a medical emergency, it was a disciplinary one. The school launched an investigation, dragging them both to the office after paramedics confirmed they had alcohol in their systems. Nothing else turned up. No one else who ate my chocolates got sick, and the extra samples I had left were clean. Garrett and Olivia were suspended indefinitely, and their parents pulled them from school in disgrace. I thought I had won. It sure felt that way too. Until a month later when I was walking home, and I saw them standing a few blocks away from my house, clearly waiting for me. My stomach dropped, but I kept walking. Running would make me look guilty. As I got closer, Garrett stepped forward with his hands up like he was surrendering. He said they just wanted to talk, said they were sorry about homecoming and everything after. Olivia nodded along, her eyes red like she'd been crying. I didn't trust them, but I also didn't want to make a scene in the middle of the street. Mrs. Chen was watering her garden and definitely watching us, so I stopped and listened. They apologized for using me, said they'd been wrong and selfish. Garrett actually looked sincere for once. Olivia said she missed her best friend and wanted things to go back to normal. They didn't mention the chocolate incident directly, but we all knew what this was really about, a peace treaty. I accepted their apology because what else could I do? We hugged awkwardly and went our separate ways. I thought maybe things would actually get better. I was so stupid. The rumors started 3 days later, little whispers at first. People saying I was obsessed with Garrett, that I'd been stalking him since freshman year. Someone claimed they saw me following him home and taking pictures. Another person said I had a shrine to him in my locker. Complete lies, but told with enough detail that people believed them. My friend Emma asked me if it was true that I'd written Garrett love letters every day for a year. When I said no, she looked like she didn't believe me. Then my stuff started disappearing. First, it was small things. My calculator vanished from my backpack during lunch. My history notes disappeared from my locker even though I knew I'd locked it. Then bigger things. My entire English essay that I'd spent weeks on just almost gone from my folder. When I tried to explain to Mrs. Martinez that someone had stolen it, she gave me this look like I was making excuses. I had to redo the whole thing and got marked down for turning it in late. My friends started pulling away. Sarah suddenly couldn't hang out anymore because of family stuff. Jessica was always busy with other plans. Even Marcus, who I'd known since elementary school, started avoiding me in the halls. When I confronted him, he mumbled something about not wanting to get involved in drama. I asked what drama, and he just shrugged and walked away. 2 weeks into this nightmare, Olivia did something that changed everything. She posted a screenshot on Instagram. It looked like a text conversation between us where I admitted to poisoning them on purpose, where I bragged about it and said they deserved worse. The messages were fake, but they looked real. She'd even gotten the timestamps and read receipts to match up perfectly. The caption said she'd been too scared to come forward before, but couldn't stay silent anymore. The post went viral in our school within hours. Everyone shared it, adding their own comments about how they always knew I was crazy. People I'd never even talked to were calling me psycho in the comments. Someone made a meme with my yearbook photo and the words, "Warning, do not accept chocolates," underneath. It got over 300 likes before lunch ended. I tried to defend myself, but nobody listened. When I said the messages were fake, people asked why Olivia would lie. When I pointed out that the typing style wasn't even close to how I actually texted, they said I was just trying to cover my tracks. Even teachers started looking at me differently. Mr. Thompson moved my seat to the front corner of the room, away from everyone else. Mrs. Peterson banned me from using the culinary lab without supervision. I was completely alone. I ate lunch in the bathroom stall because the cafeteria felt like walking into a firing squad. I started leaving class a minute early to avoid the hallway crowds. Even at home, my parents kept asking if everything was okay. But how could I explain that my entire life was falling apart because of a fake screenshot? I knew I needed proof to clear my name, but I didn't know where to start. Then I remembered something. Garrett was always recording stuff for his social media. He had this YouTube channel where he posted vlogs, and he was constantly filming random moments for TikTok. If he recorded so much of his life, maybe he'd recorded something that could help me. The problem was getting access to his phone or computer. I couldn't exactly walk up and ask to borrow it. But then I remembered his little brother Carl went to our school too. 9th grader, kind of nerdy, always getting picked on by Garrett's friends. I'd seen Garrett shove him into lockers more than once, always playing it off as brotherly joking, but Carl's face said otherwise. I found Carl sitting alone in the library during study hall. He looked up nervously when I sat down, probably expecting me to start drama. Instead, I asked him about his coding project I'd heard him talking about in the computer lab. His whole face lit up. Nobody ever asked him about his interests. We talked for 20 minutes about programming and video games. Eventually, I casually mentioned how Garrett was always on his phone and asked if he ever let Carl use it. Carl snorted and said Garrett would unalive him if he touched his stuff. But then he added something interesting. Garrett used the same password for everything because he was too lazy to remember different ones, and Carl knew what it was because he'd seen Garrett type it a million times. I didn't push right then. I spent the next week being friendly to Carl, sitting with him at lunch when Garrett wasn't around, helping him with his English homework, listening to him complain about his brother. Finally, when I felt like he trusted me enough, I told him the truth. How Garrett and Olivia had humiliated me and were now trying to ruin my life. Carl wasn't surprised. He said Garrett had been doing stuff like that for years, just usually to people who couldn't fight back. Carl gave me the password. Garrett Rules 2005. Of course it was something that stupid. He also told me Garrett's phone automatically backed up to the cloud every night and the login was saved on their family computer. Carl said his parents were going to some charity dinner on Friday and Garrett would be at Olivia's house. I'd have a window to look through his files. That Friday, I told my parents I was studying at the library and went to Carl's house instead. He let me in and showed me to the computer in their dad's office. My hands were shaking as I logged into Garrett's cloud storage. There were thousands of files, photos, videos, messages, everything from the last 3 years. I started with the messages from around homecoming. What I found made me sick. There were texts between Garrett and Olivia from weeks before he asked me to the dance. They talked about how pathetic I was, how I followed them around like a lost puppy. Olivia said it would be hilarious to see my face when I realized Garrett was into her instead. They actually planned the whole thing, the cupcake, the flowers, everything. They wanted to humiliate me publicly and then hook up at the dance while I watched. But that wasn't even the worst part. I found messages from after the chocolate incident. They were planning their revenge down to the smallest detail. Olivia had spent hours creating that fake screenshot, even researching how to make it look authentic. They had a whole list of rumors to spread and people to turn against me. They called it Operation Destroy Sarah, like they were planning a military campaign. They laughed about how I'd end up eating lunch alone and failing classes because my homework would mysteriously disappear. I took screenshots of everything, every cruel message, every planned attack, every admission of what they'd done. I also found something else interesting. Videos from parties where Garrett and Olivia were drinking and talking trash about other people, including several of their own friends. Apparently Madison wasn't as pretty as she thought she was. Jake from the football team was a moron who could barely read. Even their teacher, Mr. Thompson, got roasted for his bald spot and boring tests. I saved everything to a flash drive Carl had given me. As I was about to log out, I found one more thing, a video from the night of homecoming. Garrett had recorded himself and Olivia in the car, laughing about how stupid I looked trying to dance alone, how I'd actually believed he wanted to go with me. Olivia did an impression of my face when I saw them kissing. They were both dying laughing. The timestamp showed this was while I was in the bathroom crying, trying to fix my makeup. I thanked Carl and went home with enough evidence to bury them, but I had to be smart about how I used it. If I just posted everything online, I'd look like the crazy stalker they said I was. I needed to make them reveal themselves. I went to Principal Morrison on Monday morning. She looked tired when I walked in, probably expecting me to complain about the rumors again. Instead, I calmly told told her I had evidence that Garrett and Olivia were spreading lies about me. She sighed and said gossip wasn't really something the administration could control. That's when I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshot of them planning to destroy my reputation. Her expression changed immediately, but she still hesitated. Screenshots could be faked, she said, just like the ones Olivia had posted about me. She needed more proof before taking action against star students like Garrett and Olivia. I expected this. I asked if she'd be willing to investigate if I could get them to admit what they'd done. She said yes, but looked doubtful. I left her office and found Garrett and Olivia at their usual spot by the senior lockers. They were surrounded by friends, laughing about something on Olivia's phone. When they saw me coming, Garrett's face darkened. I walked right up to them, ignoring the way everyone stepped back like I had a disease. I said we needed to talk. Alone. Olivia laughed and asked why they'd want to talk to a psycho stalker. Her friends giggled. I stayed calm and said I had something they'd want to see. Something from Garrett's cloud storage. His face went white. He grabbed my arm and pulled me around the corner, Olivia following close behind. The hallway was empty except for us. Garrett demanded to know what I was talking about. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of his own messages about Operation Destroy Sarah. He tried to grab my phone, but I stepped back. Olivia was frantically whispering that I must have hacked his account, that this was illegal, that I'd go to jail. I let them panic for a minute before telling them what I wanted. They needed to tell Principal Morrison the truth about everything. The fake screenshots, the rumors, all of it. That's when they turned nasty. Garrett said nobody would believe me, that I was already the school joke, and this would just make it worse. Olivia added that they had connections. Her mom was on the school board. Garrett's dad donated thousands to the athletic program every year. They could make my life even worse than it already was. They'd make sure I never got into college. They'd tell everyone I was mentally unstable. They'd ruin my family's reputation too. What they didn't know was that I was recording the whole conversation. My phone was in my jacket pocket with the voice recorder app running. They kept going, getting more confident as they laid out exactly how they'd destroy me if I didn't delete everything and leave them alone. Garrett even admitted the chocolate thing was impressive, but said I'd played my hand too early. Now it was their turn to win. I let them finish their threats before pulling out my phone and stopping the recording. Their faces, when they realized what I'd done, were beautiful. Pure panic. They tried to say I'd tricked them, that the recording wouldn't count, but we all knew it was over. I walked back to Principal Morrison's office with them trailing behind, begging me to wait, to think about this, to be reasonable. I played the recording for Principal Morrison. She listened to the whole thing with her face getting darker and darker. When it finished, she looked at Garrett and Olivia like she was seeing them for the first time. She asked if they had anything to say. Olivia started crying. Real tears this time, not the fake ones she used to manipulate people. Garrett just stared at the floor. The investigation that followed was thorough. Principal Morrison interviewed dozens of students. Once people knew the truth was coming out, more kids came forward. Turns out Garrett and Olivia had pulled similar stunts before. A girl named Teresa told how they'd convinced everyone she was pregnant freshman year just because she'd refused to do Garrett's homework. A guy named Patrick explained how they'd planted test answers in his backpack and got him suspended for cheating because he'd struck Garrett for class president. The evidence kept piling up. Other kids had screenshots of cruel messages. Some had recordings of Garrett and Olivia laughing about their schemes. It was like a dam burst, and all their victims finally felt safe to speak up. Even some of their own friend group admitted they'd only hung out with them out of fear of becoming targets themselves. Garrett and Olivia were suspended immediately pending a full disciplinary hearing. Their parents tried to fight it, but the evidence was overwhelming. The fake screenshots Olivia had posted about me were traced back to her computer. The rumors were tracked to their original sources, all leading back to them. Even their college recommendation letters got pulled. Mrs. Peterson said she couldn't in good conscience recommend students who'd shown such cruelty. The hearing was brutal for them. They had to sit there while victim after victim explained how they'd been targeted, how their lives had been made miserable for petty reasons, how they'd been too scared to come forward before. Garrett's parents looked horrified. His mom actually apologized to me personally, saying she had no idea her son was capable of this. Olivia's mom tried to make excuses at first, but eventually just sat there in silence. In the end, they were expelled. Not just suspended, but completely removed from the school. They had to finish senior year at the Alternative Learning Center across town, the one where kids with serious behavioral problems went. Their college acceptances were rescinded. Garrett lost his football scholarship. Olivia's early admission to her dream school got pulled. Everything they'd worked for disappeared overnight. The day after the expulsion was announced, kids started talking to me again. Sarah apologized for abandoning me. Marcus bought me lunch and said he felt terrible for believing the rumors. Even Madison, who'd been one of Olivia's best friends, came up and said she was sorry for everything. It felt weird having people be nice to me again, like wearing shoes that used to fit but now felt foreign. Carl became my actual friend after everything. We still ate lunch together sometimes, talking about video games and coding. He said his house was way more peaceful without Garrett around. His parents were in family therapy, trying to figure out how they'd missed the signs of what their older son was really like. Carl seemed lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. I wish I could say everything went back to normal, but it didn't. Not really. I still sometimes ate lunch in the bathroom out of habit. I still flinched when people whispered in the hallways. Trust didn't come easy anymore, but at least I could walk through school without feeling like everyone hated me. My grades recovered once my homework stopped disappearing. Mrs. Peterson let me back in the advanced culinary class. I even made a few new friends who thought what I did with the chocolates was brilliant karma. The last time I saw Garrett and Olivia was at graduation. They weren't graduating with us, obviously, but they came to watch their former friends walk across the stage. They looked different, smaller somehow. Garrett had lost weight and his perfect hair was messy. Olivia wasn't wearing any makeup and kept her head down. When our eyes met across the football field, they quickly looked away. No anger, no threats, just defeat. I got into my first choice college with a partial scholarship for culinary arts. My essay about overcoming adversity and standing up to bullies apparently impressed the admissions committee. My parents were proud. My real friends were happy for me. Even Mr. Thompson wrote me a recommendation letter saying I'd shown remarkable resilience in the face of unfair treatment. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far with the chocolates, if I should have just confronted them directly about homecoming instead of plotting revenge. But then I remember that video of them laughing at me in the car, the way they'd planned everything to cause maximum humiliation, the joy they took in watching me suffer. They didn't just break my heart that night. They tried to break my spirit. They almost succeeded too, but I'm stronger than they thought, smarter too. They assumed I'd just take whatever they dished out because that's what I'd always done before. They never considered that the quiet girl they'd pushed too far might push back, that their perfect plan might backfire spectacularly, that karma might come in the form of chocolate-covered consequences. I don't feel bad about what happened to them. They made their choices and faced the results. Every rumor they spread, every lie they told, every person they hurt came back to destroy them. I just helped speed up the process. And if they learned anything from the experience, maybe they'll think twice before targeting someone else at their new school, though somehow I doubt it. People like that rarely change. They just find new victims. As for me, I learned that staying silent doesn't make problems go away. It just makes them worse. I learned that bullies count on their victims being too scared or too nice to fight back. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting evidence. Documentation beats retaliation every time. Let them hang themselves with their own words. All you have to do is hold the rope. I also learned to make really good chocolates. My professor at culinary school says I have a natural talent for flavor combinations. I stick to normal ingredients now, though. No more special additions. Turns out regular chocolate is sweet enough on its own, and the only thing I want to leave people with now is a good taste in their mouth. Well, mostly anyway. There might be a few people from high school who should still avoid accepting candy from me, just to be safe. The next few weeks at school were weird. People would come up to me randomly and apologize for things they'd said or done. Jennifer from my PE class brought me cookies she'd baked as a sorry gift. Benjamin, who sat behind me in chemistry, offered to be lab partners. Even teachers treated me differently. Mrs. Peterson asked if I wanted to help plan the end-of-year culinary showcase. Mr. Thompson actually smiled at me in the hallway, but I was still paranoid. Every time someone whispered, I wondered if new rumors were starting. When my pencil case went missing, I immediately suspected sabotage before finding it under my bed at home. Trust was hard. I'd learned that people could pretend to be your friend while planning your destruction. How could I know who was genuine? Then something unexpected happened. Teresa, the girl who'd been targeted by Garrett and Olivia freshman year, started sitting with me at lunch. She didn't make a big deal about it, just showed up with her tray and asked if the seat was taken. We didn't talk much at first, just ate in comfortable silence. Eventually, she told me the full story of what they'd done to her, how the pregnancy rumor had followed her for 2 years, how her parents had made her take 3 pregnancy tests because they didn't believe her denials, how she'd considered transferring schools just to escape it. More kids started joining us. Patrick brought his friend Gabriel, who'd been too scared to report when Garrett had stolen his phone and posted embarrassing photos from it. Sarah joined us after Olivia had convinced everyone she was bulimic because she'd turned down cake at a party. Joyce came over when she heard we were the table for Garrett and Olivia survivors. By the end of the week, we needed to push 2 tables together. We didn't just talk about what they'd done to us. We talked about normal stuff too. Movies, homework, college plans. But there was an understanding between us. We'd all been through something similar and survived. It felt good not being alone anymore, not having to explain why I still checked my locker 3 times to make sure it was locked. One day, Deborah from the yearbook committee asked if she could interview me. She was doing a feature on standing up to bullying and wanted my story. I almost said no. Part of me wanted to forget everything and move on. But then I thought about all the kids who might be going through the same thing, who might think they had no options except to suffer in silence. So I agreed. The interview was harder than I expected. Talking about homecoming brought back all those feelings of humiliation. Describing the isolation made me realize how close I'd come to giving up entirely. But Deborah was patient and kind. She let me take breaks when I needed them. She didn't push for details I wasn't ready to share. When the article came out, she'd written it beautifully. Not sensationalized or dramatic, just honest. The response was overwhelming. Kids I'd never talked to before thanked me for speaking up. A freshman named Morgan said they'd been dealing with similar bullying, and my story gave them courage to report it. Even parents reached out. One mom sent a letter saying her daughter had finally told her about harassment she'd been facing after reading my interview. Of course, not everyone was supportive. Some of Garrett and Olivia's old friends still blamed me. They said I'd ruined their lives over petty high school drama, that I should have just let it go instead of destroying their futures. A few anonymous notes showed up in my locker calling me vindictive and worse, but their opinions didn't matter anymore. I knew the truth, and so did everyone else who mattered. Prom season arrived, and I wasn't planning to go. The thought of another formal dance made me nauseous, but my lunch table friends convinced me it would be different this time. Teresa offered to do my makeup. Patrick said his older brother could drive us all in his van. Joyce found a dress for me at a thrift store that was actually prettier than my homecoming one. It was emerald green with delicate beading and cost $30 instead of $300. The night of prom, we all got ready at Teresa's house. Her mom made us dinner and took about 1,000 photos. Nobody posed with the wrong person or made anyone feel left out. When we got to the venue, we stuck together as a group. No couples drama, no third wheel situations, just friends having fun. When a slow song came on, we all stayed on the dance floor in a big circle, swaying and laughing at how ridiculous we looked. I actually enjoyed myself, danced until my feet hurt, ate too much cake, took stupid photos in the photo booth with props. It was what homecoming should have been. No drama, no ulterior motives, just teenagers being teenagers. When the night ended, I realized I'd gone 4 hours without thinking about Garrett and Olivia once. Senior year started winding down. College College acceptances came in, and everyone was making plans. I got into 3 schools, but decided on the Culinary Institute 2 states away. Far enough to start fresh, but close enough to come home when I wanted. My parents were sad about me leaving, but excited about my future. They'd watched me go through hell and come out stronger. My mom said she was proud of how I'd handled everything. Carl got into MIT early admission. Turns out when you're not being terrorized by your older brother, you can focus on academics. He was nervous about leaving home, but excited about being around people who shared his interests. We promised to keep in touch. He'd become like the little brother I never had, way better than his actual brother had ever been to him. The senior class trip was to an amusement park. I wasn't going to go, but my friends talked me into it. We spent the day riding roller coasters and eating overpriced food. At one point, I saw 2 familiar figures by the funnel cake stand. Garrett and Olivia were there with what looked like their alternative school group. They saw me too, but quickly looked away. No confrontation, no drama. We just existed in the same space without interacting. Progress. Graduation day was perfect. Sunny, but not too hot. My parents got there early to get good seats. My dad brought his camera with the huge lens that embarrassed me, but I was secretly glad he cared so much. When they called my name, I walked across that stage with my head high. No more hiding, no more shrinking into the background. I'd earned this moment. The graduation party circuit was intense. Every night for a week, someone was hosting something. I went to a few, but skipped the ones hosted by Garrett and Olivia's old crowd. No point in making things awkward. At Teresa's party, we all ended up in her pool at midnight, still in our clothes, laughing about how we'd survived high school. Her mom came out yelling about us getting the carpet wet, but she was smiling. Summer flew by in a blur of work and preparation. I picked up extra shifts at the ice cream shop to save money for college. My parents took me dorm shopping and went overboard buying things I'd never use. A shower caddy with 20 compartments, a desk lamp that had 15 different settings, color-coded hangers that I'd definitely mix up within a week, but their enthusiasm was sweet. The night before I left for college, Carl came over to say goodbye. He brought me a flash drive and said it had all the evidence from Garrett's cloud on it in case I ever needed it. I told him I didn't want it, that I was done with all that, but he insisted, said it was better to have it and not need it than the opposite. Smart kid. My parents drove me to campus in our overpacked minivan. My mom cried 3 times before we even got there. My dad kept making jokes to lighten the mood, but I could see he was emotional too. When we got to my dorm, my roommate was already there. A girl named Emery from Oregon who seemed normal. No red flags, no mean girl energy, just nervous excitement like me. Saying goodbye to my parents was harder than I expected. We'd been through so much together over the past year. They'd supported me even when the whole school turned against me. Never doubted my side of the story. Never suggested I should have handled things differently. Just loved me through it all. I hugged them extra tight and promised to call every week. The first few weeks of college were an adjustment. Nobody knew my story. I was just another freshman trying to figure out where classes were and how to do laundry without turning everything pink. It felt good being anonymous. No whispers when I walked by. No reputation preceding me. Just a clean slate. I made friends in my culinary classes pretty quickly. Turns out people who love food are generally pretty cool. We formed study groups that usually turned into cooking experiments. My dorm kitchen became our test lab. Reese from my knife skills class taught me how to julienne vegetables properly. Hayden showed me their secret for perfect pie crust. Greer and I competed to see who could make the best chocolate souffle. Sometimes I'd get messages from people back home, updates on how things were going. Teresa got into her dream school for journalism. Patrick was taking a gap year to travel. Joyce was staying local for community college, but happy about it. Even Carl checked in regularly, sending memes about college life and updates on his coding projects. I heard through the grapevine that Garrett and Olivia had broken up. Apparently, when you build a relationship on hurting others, it doesn't have a strong foundation. Garrett was working at his dad's company, not going to college at all. Olivia was at some small school nobody had heard of. Their fall from grace was complete. I didn't feel happy about it exactly, just relieved it was over. My first semester grades were solid. Turns out when you're not worried about your homework being stolen or rumors being spread, you can actually focus on learning. My chocolate unit was my strongest. The professor said I had an intuitive understanding of flavor combinations. I didn't mention my previous experience with creative chocolate making. Some stories are better left in the past. Winter break meant going home for the first time. I was nervous about being back in that town, but it was different now. The high school drama felt distant. Ancient history. I met up with my lunch table crew, and we went to our old spot at the diner. Talked about college and how weird it was being adults. Nobody mentioned Garrett or Olivia. They'd become irrelevant to our lives. The rest of freshman year passed quickly. Spring semester brought harder classes, but also more confidence. I entered a student cooking competition and placed 3rd. Made friends outside the culinary program. Even went on a few dates with a guy from my statistics class who made me laugh. Nothing serious, but nice. Normal. No hidden agendas or cruel plots. When summer came, I got an internship at a bakery near campus instead of going home. Spent my days learning from a master pastry chef who'd trained in France. She was tough but fair. Pushed me to be better without tearing me down. I learned more that summer than in some of my actual classes. Plus, I got to take home leftover pastries. My roommate loved me for that. Sophomore year started, and I felt like a different person than the girl who'd been humiliated at homecoming. Stronger, more confident, less willing to accept poor treatment. When a girl in my advanced baking class tried to start drama about group project responsibilities, I shut it down immediately. No passive acceptance, no letting things slide, just clear boundaries and expectations. I decided to minor in business along with my culinary degree. Figured if I wanted to open my own place someday, I should know how to run it. The classes were boring compared to cooking, but necessary. Plus, it gave me a backup plan. Always good to have options. Lessons learned from putting all my trust in the wrong people. Sometimes late at night, I'd think about that homecoming dance. Not with sadness anymore, just curiosity about how different my life might have been. If Garrett had actually wanted to go with me. If Olivia Olivia had really been my friend, but then I'd look around my dorm room at my culinary awards and photos with real friends and realize I was exactly where I needed to be. The chocolate incident became a funny story I'd tell sometimes at parties. People would gasp and laugh and say they couldn't believe I'd done that, but they also understood why. Everyone had a story about someone who'd pushed them too far. Mine just had a more creative response than most, and honestly, it made for a great conversation starter. By junior year, I was teaching underclassmen in the teaching kitchen, showing nervous freshmen how to hold knives properly and not burn simple syrup. It felt good passing on knowledge, being the mentor I'd wished I'd had. When one student came to me about being bullied by her lab partner, I helped her document everything and report it properly. No chocolate revenge needed, just proper channels and accountability. I ran into Carl over winter break that year. He was home from MIT, looking older and more confident. Still nerdy, but in a good way. He'd found his people there, was working on some app that I didn't understand but sounded impressive. He thanked me for being kind to him when everyone else had written him off as just Garrett's weird brother. Said it had meant more than I knew. Senior year of college felt surreal. 4 years had passed since that nightmare in high school. I was student teaching at a local high school's culinary program, full circle in a way. When I saw kids dealing with social drama, I tried to provide a safe space in the kitchen. Cooking could be therapeutic, measuring and mixing and creating something good from basic ingredients. My thesis project was on the psychology of comfort food, how certain flavors could evoke memories and emotions. My advisor said it was one of the most interesting approaches she'd seen. I didn't mention that my interest came from personal experience with weaponizing food. Academic papers probably shouldn't include revenge plots. Graduation approached again. This time I was ready for it. No anxiety about the future. I had job offers from 3 restaurants and was leaning toward the one that would let me develop my own dessert menu. My parents were coming, and this time my mom promised not to cry much. My college friends were all scattering to different cities, but we swore we'd stay in touch, and I actually believed we would. The week before graduation, I got an unexpected message on social media. It was from Olivia. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won. She wasn't asking for forgiveness or trying to reconnect, just wanted me to know she was in therapy and working on being a better person. Said what they'd done to me was inexcusable and she was sorry. Not expecting a response, just needed to say it. I thought about it for a long time before typing back. Told her I appreciated the apology, but we'd never be friends. That I'd moved on and hoped she could too. That high school was a long time ago and we were different people now, or at least I was. I wished her well and meant it. Then I blocked her. Some doors should stay closed. Graduation day was rainy, but nobody cared. We sat there in our caps and gowns getting soaked while speakers talked about our bright futures. When they called my name, I walked across that stage thinking about how far I'd come. From the girl crying in the homecoming bathroom to a confident woman with a degree and a plan. It hadn't been the journey I'd expected, but maybe that made it more valuable. The celebration dinner with my parents was at a fancy restaurant downtown. They were so proud they kept telling our waiter about my accomplishments. Embarrassing, but sweet. Over dessert, my dad said something that stuck with me. He said the strongest steel goes through the hottest fire. That what happened in high school had forged me into someone unbreakable. Cheesy, but true. Moving to start my new job was exciting and terrifying. New city, new people, new challenges. But I'd learned I could handle whatever came my way. The first day in the professional kitchen was intense, fast-paced and demanding. But when I presented my first dessert special and the head chef approved it, I felt like I'd found my place. 6 months into the job, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was a reporter from our hometown paper. They were doing a feature on bullying in schools and wanted to interview me about my experience, how it had shaped my path. I thought about it for a week before agreeing. If my story could help even one kid stand up for themselves, it was worth revisiting those memories. The article came out a month later. They'd interviewed teachers and administrators too. Changes had been made at the school, better reporting systems, more accountability, zero tolerance for the kind of systematic harassment Garrett and Olivia had perfected. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. The reporter said my story had been a catalyst for change. That felt better than any revenge could have. Now I'm 25 and running my own dessert catering business. Turns out all those business classes paid off. I specialize in custom chocolates for events. The irony isn't lost on me, but these chocolates only bring joy. No secret ingredients except quality and care. My clients love the personal touch I bring to each order. If only they knew how personal chocolate could really be. Sometimes when I'm tempering chocolate late at night in my commercial kitchen, I think about that desperate girl making revenge chocolates in her parents' kitchen. I don't judge her. She was doing the best she could with the tools she had, fighting back the only way she knew how. It wasn't the high road, but it was the road that led me here, and here is pretty good. I still keep in touch with my high school survivor group. We have a group chat where we celebrate each other's wins and support through challenges. Teresa is the investigative journalist exposing corruption. Patrick runs a nonprofit for at-risk youth. Joyce is a social worker helping kids navigate difficult situations. We all took our pain and transformed it into purpose. Maybe that's the real revenge. Living well and helping others do the same. Last week, I catered a wedding back in my hometown. Small world. As I was setting up the chocolate fountain, I saw 2 familiar faces among the guests. Garrett and Olivia, separately, both looking uncomfortable when they spotted each other. And then they saw me. The girl they'd tried to destroy was now providing the desserts for their friend's wedding. Professional and successful. The look on their faces was better than any revenge I could have planned. I smiled politely and continued my setup. No drama, no confrontation. Just a woman doing her job well, living her life fully. Proof that you can't keep someone down who refuses to stay there. They avoided the dessert table all night. Probably smart. My chocolates are safe now, but old fears die hard. And honestly, that made me smile too.